Guess where? Florida. On election night, Governor Rick Scott had a big lead over incumbent Senator Bill Nelson for that Senate seat. But since then, a constant stream of votes in left-leaning Broward County and Palm County has appeared to chip away at Scott's lead. So it went from 40,000 now to around 15,000. There's plenty of reason to be suspicious of that as well. Now, Broward County has a long history of electoral problems. Let me refresh your memory. In 2000, they contributed to the Florida recount mayhem. Just 2 years later, a primary election in the county was a disaster with broken voting machines, uncounted ballots, no-show poll workers. 2003, they get their act together? No. More than 17,000 mail-in votes were returned as undeliverable. In 2004, county officials grossly mishandled absentee ballots, keeping thousands from reaching voters in time. It's only gotten worse more than a decade later. In 2016, the county was sued once again for mishandling absentee ballots and was also caught illegally destroying ballots, even as a lawsuit over a primary outcome was pending. The woman responsible for that is still in charge of counting Broward's votes today, and that is mind-boggling. Yesterday on this program, Marco Rubio denounced the whole process for violating Florida's own election laws. Today, President Trump joined in on the attack.
If you look at Broward County, they have had a horrible history. And if you look at the person, in this case a woman.
And good morning. This is a Fox News alert. I'm Jackie Ibanez in New York. President and First Lady Melania Trump are in Paris. You can see their car for the first weekend to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. You can see there in Paris. It is a rainy morning. They're going around there to get the president and Melania to meet with Emmanuel Macron, president of France. There is President Trump walking in and meeting, shaking hands there with Macron. The president will be going into a meeting shortly with the president, Macron. The visit of the president's not expected to be as cordial as his last visit, you may remember. Their relationship at the outset was marked by kisses and frequent meetings and marathon power handshakes, but this visit getting off to a bumpy start as Air Force One was landing in Paris. The president tweeting this. President Macron of France has just suggested that Europe build its own military in order to protect itself from the U.S., China, and Russia. Very insulting, but perhaps Europe should first pay its fair share of NATO, which the U.S. subsidizes greatly. End quote. So that's what he was saying as he was headed there to Paris to meet with Macron. Macron has been calling for an all-European army since his election last year, with his calls getting louder following the president's decision to pull out of a Cold War-era nuclear weapons treaty with Russia. This morning's talks are expected to cover these topics, including trade, European security, Syria, and Iran. You can see the media just rushing there. The Trump visit comes on the heels of midterm elections in which voters delivered a split referendum on his presidency. The Democrats winning control of the House, but the Republicans keeping control of the Senate. Macron's popularity also has been taking quite a hit. Let's see. In 2017, he was elected with a comfortable 66% of the vote. Far-right nationalist Marine Le Pen had just 34% of the vote. Now the latest polls show Macron and Le Pen dead even there at 20%. After this morning's talks, the president and first lady will visit the Ann Marne American Cemetery near Belleau Wood, a very famous bloody World War I battleground, of course. Stick with Fox News Channel for continuing coverage of the president's trip there to Paris. I'm Jackie Ibanez in New York. Now we return to Tucker Carlson tonight, which is already in progress.
Oops, you weren't supposed to do that. And with that, Republicans and Democrats alike are very concerned about Broward for different reasons. Democrats concerned that maybe a goofy ballot may have caused a lot of people to overlook the Senate race because it was tucked in the lower left below the instructions, may have cost Bill Nelson votes. Then you have the Scott camp, Marco Rubio and others looking at Broward County's recent history of breaking the law, illegally destroying ballots, raising suspicions in their minds as well. And with this, once again, it's all about Florida, and it is all focused on Southeast Florida.
The way I understand it, Craig, and correct me, by noon tomorrow, Broward County's got to tell us who voted for who and what the totals are. Now, they were supposed to, right? So 30 minutes after the polls closed, they're supposed to submit all their ballots. They didn't. So for a Republican candidate to win, and then to hear about uncounted ballots, and then see their lead dissipate, knowing that they broke the rules already. Why is that voter suppression? You just can't have votes coming in for weeks. The kids had off from school for a reason. It was election day.
And that's exactly Governor Scott's position on this. The Democratic position would be because of the blunders that exist in Broward County that go way back in time under the leadership of Snipes, who was appointed by former Governor Jeb Bush. She is a Republican appointee. They have qualms with long-running blunders that they say have affected Democrats and Republicans alike. And again, they point to what they think may be either a machine calibration issue or a funky design of a ballot, in which case a race like this one can be easily overlooked. This is something, though, that's going to come out in the wash. We will find out in the course of a recount if there is something to that or not.
And by the way, when you mean about funky ballot, evidently at the bottom left, you would know you voted of the ballot was the Senate race. Up top was the governor's race. So everyone seemed to vote for governor and not as many for senator. A lot could be because you had an exciting brand new candidate, Andrew Gillum. There was a lot more interest, it seems, in the governor's race. Regardless, Democrats.
All right, back with a Fox News Alert. I'm Jackie Ibanez here in New York. We are looking at President Trump and French President Emmanuel Macron in a bilateral meeting here. Let's tune in and listen a little bit of what they have to say.
Ensuite, nous allons évidemment parler de beaucoup de sujets d'intérêt commun. L'Iran, la Syrie, les sujets commerciaux, l'ordre international, y compris les sujets climatiques, les sujets liés à l'Afrique. Et bien évidemment, je vais aussi partager avec le président Trump les propositions faites sur les capacités stratégiques européennes et une Europe qui puisse prendre davantage la part justement du fardeau commun au sein de l'OTAN. En tout cas, je suis très heureux à nouveau d'accueillir mon ami le président Trump. Nous allons échanger tous les deux, puis déjeuner avec nos épouses avant de nous retrouver ce soir et demain. I wanted to welcome my good friend President Trump and wanted to thank you for this visit. After a very important time in your domestic policy, I do appreciate the fact that you came here, Donald, after your visit for Bastille Day in 2017 and our state visit in Washington beginning of this year. I think it's very important to celebrate our soldiers and the great solidarity between our two nations. And we are the best and more ancient allies. And this is what I told our people. Obviously, we will discuss about a lot of topics: Iran, Syria, Yemen, Africa, trade, climate, and a lot of common global issues. And obviously, we will discuss about as well our defense cooperation, which is very important. And I do share President Trump's view that we need a much better burden sharing within NATO. And that's why I do believe that my proposals for European defense are totally consistent with that, because it means more Europe within NATO, more capacity, in order to take our part of the burden. And I think it's very fair and it's very important. So thanks very much, Donald, for being here. This is our pleasure, and our people are very proud to have you here. And I want to thank you here today for your solidarity 100 years ago and your constant solidarity for precisely our people.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Well, I very much appreciate that, Mr. President, and we have become very good friends over the last couple of years. And we have much in common in many ways, perhaps more ways than people would understand, but we're very much similar in our views. And I appreciate what you're saying about burden sharing. You know what my attitude's been, and we want a strong Europe. It's very important to us to have a strong Europe, and whichever way we can do it the best and most efficient would be something that we both want. I just want to thank you very much for the graciousness you were so beautifully received. We were so beautifully received last night. We look forward to spending the next day and a half with you. And today and tomorrow are going to be very important. And we'll be discussing many things, not only military and aid and NATO and others, but we'll also be discussing trade. And we've been discussing that for a little while. I think we've made a lot of progress. We'll see if we can get it over the line. As they say, we'll see what happens, but trade is very important. And we're also very much focused the President and I on terrorism. Terrorism is a very big subject for both of us. And we see what's going on in the world, and it's not a good picture. But we've made a lot of progress. We've done things together that were quite bold recently, 6 months ago, very bold. And terrorism will be a big factor and a big part of our discussion today. So I want to thank everybody for being here. And Mr. President, thank you very much.
Mr. Trump, you said you felt insulted by what Mr. Macron said about Europe making its own defense. Can you explain?
We're getting along from the standpoint of fairness, and I want it to be fair. We want to help Europe, but it has to be fair. Right now, the burden sharing has been largely on the United States, as the President will say, and he understands that. And he understands that the United States can only do so much in fairness to the United States. So we're rebuilding our military. We just had approved $716 billion. The year before that, we had $700 billion. So we're almost completely rebuilding our military with the latest and the greatest. And we want to absolutely be there. We want to help. We want to be a part of it. But different countries have to also help. That's only fair. And I think the President, we've already discussed this, and the President and I very much agree on that.
I do agree. I think we work very closely together in Syria. President Trump reminded you what happened the 13th of April this year. We work very closely together to make a superb operation against chemical weapons used there. And we work very closely together in Middle East, in Africa, and so on. But it's unfair to have the European security today being assured just by the United States, and we need a much better burden sharing. That's why I do believe that we need more European capacities, more European defense, in order to take this part of the burden. When President Trump has to protect or to defend one of the states of the United States, he doesn't ask France or Germany or another government of Europe to finance it. That's why I do believe that we need more investment. It's exactly what we do in France. It's the first increase in terms of budget for defense for the coming years. We will reach the 2%. But that's why I do believe that we need more European defense in this framework. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
When you want to go break.
Thank you. Okay.
All right. So you just heard President Trump and President Macron meeting there. It's something we didn't expect to see after the president arrived and walked through the doors. So that meeting, people are wondering how it was going to get started. Not as rocky as we thought. The two were talking about terrorism in the world. They talk a lot about burden sharing, and President Trump saying that the U.S. has taken on a lot of the burden of security there, and Macron acknowledging, he was the first one there to say that there needs to be better burden sharing with NATO. So maybe this is something we will see in these talks. Of course, President Trump saying this a little bit earlier. He said in a tweet, quote, President Macron of France has just suggested that Europe build its own military in order to protect itself from the U.S., China, and Russia. Very insulting, but perhaps Europe should first pay its fair share of NATO, which the U.S. subsidizes greatly. So, of course, that's something they will continue to address. They addressed that a little bit. One of the reporters asked President Trump about that, what he meant. Macron responded a little bit to that. Of course, President Trump is there in Paris this weekend to meet with 60 other world leaders, heads of states, the government, as they commemorate the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. So we will, of course, continue to follow this and his trip there in the next couple of days, today and tomorrow in Paris. Stick with Fox News as we cover this. And they will be back in about another, I think, 15 or 20 minutes with more on that meeting. We'll be right back. Tucker Carlson, right now.
All right, on Tuesday night, it looked like Republican Martha McSally had managed to defeat Kristen Sinema in Arizona's Senate race. That's what the polls were trending, and that's what we thought the result was. But just like Florida, more votes have been surfacing, and they've been trending heavily Democratic. Yesterday, Sinema managed to take the lead for the first time in the tally by about 9,000. President Trump weighed in today.
Now in Arizona, all of a sudden, out of the wilderness, they find a lot of votes, and the other candidate is just winning by a hair.
All right, now we're joined by Trace Gallagher. Trace, I understand Sinema's expanded her lead up to over 21,000 now today. Is that correct?
It is, and it's all about the mail-in ballots and where they fall, Brian. The way it works is in Arizona, if the signature on the mail-in ballot does not appear to match the signature on the sealed envelope, then election workers in all 15 counties call the voter to try and fix or cure the issue. In fact, they call it curing. But Maricopa and Pima counties, urban areas where Democrat Kyrsten Sinema performed better, were allowing ballots to be cured after the election. So Republicans sued to stop the process, saying calling voters after election day is a violation of state law. They argued that if some counties were allowed to cure ballots for several days after the election, then all counties had to be allowed to do the same thing. And today a judge agreed, giving the entire state until November 14th to end the so-called curing of ballots. Experts applauded the added oversight, but they say it really should only affect a small number of votes. President Trump, you said earlier, weighed in. He also said, and I'm quoting here, just out in Arizona, signatures don't match. Electoral corruption. Call for a new election. We must protect our democracy, though it is very highly unlikely that a new election will happen in Arizona. Brian.
Well, we might have to wait till next Wednesday, right, Trace?
Exactly. Next Wednesday, the 14th, you should find out by 7 o'clock Eastern time exactly what the final count should be.
Meanwhile, Trace, I know you're occupied with the fire raging through Southern California. Thanks for concentrating on Arizona for us. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, wiping out everything. Meanwhile, Chris Hahn is a radio host and former aide to Senator Chuck Schumer. He joins us right now. So, no, I don't really see much of a scandal in Arizona. The more people I talk to from Arizona, they just say this is kind of the way we do things, which is something we should probably examine, because we do have to wait till next Wednesday. I understand, Chris, with Sinema up top, she does have to tighten her belt because the counties that have not been uncounted, the ballots are up to 457,000 uncounted, and some of them are in strong red areas. How do you expect this to go?
I expect Sinema to win. I think this margin will hold. Probably she might even increase it a little bit. Most of the outstanding ballots are either in her congressional district or in Maricopa County, which is the home of the biggest city in Arizona. She is going to win this election. I think most Republican strategists I've talked to last couple of days feel the same, and they're just counting the ballots out there. I know the president's trying to put a spin on it, but no, they're counting. That's what they do after an election. They have mail-ins there. And the worst thing an election commissioner wants is a close election, because you wind up going a couple of days after and people get frustrated. We're in an instant gratification culture. And we're just going to have to be patient. They don't take office till January 1. We've got plenty of time to figure it out.
So if you're Rick Scott, do you blame him for being a little ticked off today? Even though he's the governor of the state, he's looking at Broward County, and he just cannot believe that that county and Palm County are the two ones who don't even get close to doing what they're supposed to do again, and that is telling us how many people voted 30 minutes after the polls. 65 other counties did it no problem.
You know, if I'm Rick Scott, I'm thanking Broward County, because they messed up the design of their ballot, and 25,000 people didn't vote for United States Senator. Those same 25,000 people voted for Agricultural Commissioner. I'm pretty sure that they weren't excited about Agriculture Commissioner. So he should be thanking them, not using the power of his office to try to intimidate election workers who have till tomorrow to give him the results. And if he's got a problem with the way things are going there, that's what the courts are for. He went into court today to seek some relief. He got access to those ballots, and I think we should let it play out. Let's see where the votes go. They're going to count all the votes, and really the margin of victory here might be those 25,000 ballots. So he should be happy for that incompetence, and I don't like that incompetence at all. But I don't think there's a lot of dubious activity when it goes to counting the votes there right now. But there is dubious activity when the governor of the state of Florida utilizes his office to intimidate those workers. And then conservatives send a mob to protest outside of them as they're trying to do their job.
Right. And by the way, Chris, I don't know if you have a monitor there, but we're actually splitting with a live shot of Fort Lauderdale as they ask each other, how do we get into this mess again? When you say, when you look at this, if you're Rick Scott, I don't know what he could do from county to county, but in Broward County, which as you know is mostly blue, They have been riddled with problems. In 2000, we know about what they did with broken machines, uncounted ballots, and no-show workers, undeliverable ballots, absentee ballots. In 2016, Chris, they closed and posted the election results 30 minutes before the election actually ended, while the polls were still open in the county. They have been a mess. So right now, they're holding everything up. So if you look at what they're doing, they're the ones who missed their deadline.
Yeah, look, the deadline's tomorrow at noon. And they're going to, hopefully they'll make that deadline. And remember, that's one of the biggest counties in Florida. These small counties where, they seem to go overwhelmingly for Scott and DeSantis, they don't have as many people as Broward. In fact, there are more people in your building right now than in some of those counties. So there's a reason why this takes a little bit longer, and hopefully they get it done right. But we need a uniform system so that this doesn't happen.
Let's you and I go down to Broward County and make them drill days before to get it done. There are bigger counties with more ballots, and they're able to pull it off. But again, we're stuck in Florida, and again, we're stuck with controversy. And you know who's getting rich?
I'm with you, Brian, but you're buying.
You got it. Absolutely.
I'm with you.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Okay. Great to see you. Have a fantastic weekend. All right. We'll see how that goes. Meanwhile, the midterm elections have done nothing to stem the left's meltdown over Russia and the Mueller investigation. That story is next. All right, President Trump has landed in Paris. The president is in France to celebrate Armistice Day on November 11th, which will mark the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I. And just before arriving, the president kind of ticked off, tweeted angrily about French President Emmanuel Macron, writing, quote, President Macron of France has just suggested that Europe build its own military in order to protect itself from the U.S., China, and Russia. Very insulting. But perhaps Europe should first pay its fair share of NATO, which the U.S. subsidizes greatly. Exclamation point, close quote. We'll continue to cover the president's visit to France, unscripted, always fun, throughout the weekend. Meanwhile, with the 2018 midterms finally over, you might have hoped that the left-wing protesters would finally calm down. After all, they got the House. But if you did hope for that, it was a foolish hope. In coordinated rallies across the country, last night protesters turned out to protest in support of Mueller investigation and against the firing of their new idol, Jeff Sessions. Talking heads in the press played along.
We now have a constitutional crisis within the constitutional crisis. We now have a state of emergency within the state of emergency. This has gotten very dangerous.
This is a national emergency. I don't think you can overstate the gravity of the situation. The broad public, this is the time to maybe take to the streets.
This is worse than Watergate.
He has been absolutely outrageous in the way that he has called names, outrageous in the way that he has threatened, outrageous in the way that he's promoting himself all the time. He wants to act like a dictator.
Get used to that voice for the next 2 years. Dan Bongino is a former Secret Service agent and NRA TV contributor. He's also the author of a brand new book. It's great. It's called Spygate, The Attempted Sabotage of Donald J. Trump. He joins us right now. So this guy's temporary. Matt Whitaker, he's going to be acting. The president's going to talk to a few people, make him attorney general, try to get him confirmed. Probably happen. What's the problem with Matt Whitaker?
There is no problem with Matt Whitaker, Brian. The left is an emotion-based move. They're a bunch of romper room kids. I mean, when are we going to learn as conservatives, I'm serious, to ignore these Looney Tunes? They move from one outrage campaign to the next. Today it's Whitaker. Yesterday it was Kavanaugh. Before that it was the travel ban, the immigration crisis at the border. It's an endless outrage campaign. There's nothing wrong with Whitaker. The fact that Whitaker made some commentary on cable news about a case everybody was talking about does not disqualify him from acting impartially. I mean, we just had Brennan and Clapper on cable news. Brennan accused the president of treason. Now, I want to make sure everybody gets that on the record, so now he cannot be appointed to a position in the future either. I mean, it's just another outrage campaign. Please, just ignore this stuff. It's nonsense.
So what they're saying is Whitaker's going to come in. He's been a critic of Mueller, saying things like the president's finances, as a commentator like you are, if you took office right now, they would roll up the Dan Bongino tapes and say, how can he do that? You said, well, I'm a citizen, and I'm allowed to have an opinion. Whitaker's a citizen. He's allowed to have an opinion. In his opinion, the Mueller investigation going to the president's finances is a no-go zone. Now he's in charge. And people worry that he's going to collapse the Mueller investigation. The president has held his tongue for 2 years, not his tongue, but he's held back on Mueller for 2 years. So why would he stop now?
You know what's hysterical about this? He had an opinion. So did Andy Weissman, who is Bob Mueller's chief pit bull, who emailed Sally Yates. We've seen the emails. He's investigating Trump now, congratulating Sally Yates for defying Donald Trump. Andy Weissman is investigating Trump. And I get it, everybody, oh, whataboutism. You're damn right it's whataboutism. Or you just told us that you're not allowed to have an opinion or you're conflicted. Weissman has an opinion. And on that matter with Whitaker, because I don't want to get off that topic, Whitaker said something perfectly practical. The Mueller investigation and the probe was designed to probe Russian collusion. There's nothing in there about Trump's finances or his business deals. That was a perfectly accurate and appropriate opinion. This is just another outrage campaign. Ignore it. Ignore these people.
Well, who do you think, or who would you like to see, and who do you think the president will put in that spot? Pam Bondi from your state.
Yeah.
I know the president really respects her. Chris Christie was in there yesterday.
Let me throw something out there. Some of the audience may jump back, but I would love to see Ted Cruz. You get a double whammy out of this. You get a solid constitutional conservative who will never fold. This guy is principled. We know it. We love him. Secondly, you get an open seat in Texas. The Dems will pour a bunch of money in there into fool's gold again. We'll get Beto #2. They'll waste all their money and time. They won't spend another Senate seats, and we win again in Texas. I think it's a great plan.
In your opinion, is the president looking back at the Whitaker controversy and letting it worry him in Paris today?
I don't think so. I mean, of course, he's probably paying attention to it, but the president's gotten very good at ignoring ridiculous romper room-like far left outrage campaigns. This is another one. It'll blow over by next week. These rallies are ridiculous. Anti-Sessions rallies. They were accusing Sessions of being a Russian colluder a few months ago. Now they love Sessions or pro-Sessions rallies. Even I'm getting confused about the left.
I was amazed because 8,000 people in New York got together to protest the firing of Jeff Sessions as if their idol, if they could pick him out of a lineup.
Go to McDonald's, have a coffee, folks. Chill out with the outrage campaigns. Please take the weekend off.
You take the weekend off. You're in every show
I know,
today.
I
What's
can't. I'm
going
up
on?
here. Plus, I heard you were guest hosting, so this was great.
I'm honored.
In studio.
Fantastic. And I'm so glad you didn't wear a tie. I regret
Never.
wearing a tie.
I'm not wearing
That's
a
how
tie.
cool you
Ever
look.
again.
All
Fox,
right.
I'm sorry, but I can't do it. I can't even make a tie. My elbows are arthritic. So
That's
sorry.
right. Well, that's what happens when you do
It's
the
the
UFC
excuse I
thing.
use every
Okay?
time.
Thanks, Dan. And thanks for your service. All right. Meanwhile, the migrant caravan is still on its way north, and President Trump is preparing for its arrival. His executive order and the story that will handle this caravan is coming your way. Watch as we take a wide shot and go to break.
I just signed the proclamation on asylum, very important. People can come in, but they have to come in through the ports of entry.
All right. Meanwhile, it's a good thing the president stopped before he went to Paris. He had a lot to say. The Central American migrant caravan is still snaking towards the U.S. border. Now, President Trump is responding, as you just heard, to its approach by tightening U.S. asylum laws. This is really I'm very curious about this, see if it's going to withstand a test. In a proclamation signed this morning, the president says that nobody caught illegally entering the U.S. will be allowed to claim asylum after the fact. They'll never be citizens. The move is already facing a legal challenge. Andrew Arthur is a former immigration judge and law and policy fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies and joins us right now. Andrew, first tell me what this executive order with this proclamation says.
The executive order actually bars the entry of individuals who are entering the United States illegally to the United States. He's using his authority under Section 212F and 215A of the INA to do that.
So he's saying if you try to sneak in and, you go and you claim asylum, you're not going to, if you don't go to the port of entry, you are never going to be a citizen. So you better go to the port of entry and you better go in the right way. And then we'll hear what you have to say and see if it adds up to the level that we accept you for asylum, right?
That's correct. And what the president is attempting to do is to channel everybody who has what's called a credible fear claim through those ports of entry so that they can enter in a orderly and legal fashion rather than sneaking across the border where we have to use our Border Patrol agents to go out and find them. That it puts huge stress on the 16,000 Border Patrol agents who patrol the 1,900 miles of the border every day. And it makes the system break down. And so quite frankly, this is the best possible solution that we could have to have those people go through the port of entry. That'll also give those people encouragement to apply in a third country, Mexico, which is a asylum granting country as well.
Yeah, I read that in the last fiscal year, 140,000 Central and South Americans have come to this country illegally. So now if you ferry them to the port of entry, then all of a sudden some are going to say this takes forever. The process is going to be so long that the word's going to get out that it's not easy to get into this country anymore, and it'll have a positive ripple effect. That's the hope, correct?
That's exactly the hope. Right now, we're seeing about 2,000 people a day who are inadmissible to the United States who are apprehended. The president is attempting to stem that flow, and that's even before the caravan of individuals from the Northern Triangle countries of El Salvador, Honduras, and Guatemala even make it to the United States. Once they do actually make it to this country, and the president's attempting to proactively, again, funnel those individuals into the ports of entry where they can be processed in an orderly fashion.
So do it the right way, work yourself towards a green card, make the green card citizenship, or do it the wrong way and blow it. When you're never going to be a citizen, there is something called spared from deportation by qualifying for a lesser status known as withholding of removal. That's in the bylaws. We'll see if this can withstand a legal challenge. But you just told me in the break that you think this is very creative and this is a very well thought out provision.
I really think that the president has had the experience of having his other executive orders and proclamations subject to many layers of judicial review, and I think that they've done a very good job of crafting this one to sustain those challenges.
All right, and the ACLU will be there to test it. Thank you so much, Andrew Arthur.
Thank you, Brian.
Okay, let's move ahead. After a disappointing midterm, the left is attacking GOP voting women based on their race. That story's next. Plus, Tucker is back after the break. He'll break down the midterm results with Senator Joe Lieberman, Independent Joe. And I've been hitting the road on my book tour. I may be